All right, we are going to begin our pre-trip of this Class A vehicle, truck, and trailer. And we will also do the end cab. So we're going to break this up into three parts. The first part will be from the keys all the way to the def tank. The next part will be from the airlines on the back of the tractor, all of the rest of the tractor, that axle, and the entire trailer all the way to the end. And then we'll do a third part, which will be when I come and get inside. So we'll break this up into three videos. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to grab your keys and put them in your pocket. Go ahead and shut your door. Next thing, you would get out the chalks. I'm not going to do it for the saving of time, but you're going to place a chalk 6 inches in the front and 6 inches in the back of your tire. Now the wheels are chalked. All right, now you're good to begin your pre-trip inspection. We're going to come to the front of the tractor and we're going to start with the clearance lights on the trailer, the clearance lights on the tractor, and those three lights in the middle are the ID lights. We're going to come down here and add in our turn signal. We put them all together because they're amber in color. They're not chipped, cracked, or broken, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws, and I see no signs of condensation. Then we're going to move over to our headlights. Our headlights are not chipped, cracked, or broken, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. They are clear in color and there's no signs of condensation. After we do our lights, we move down to what I call the COPS, which is an acronym for coolant, oil, and power steering fluids. And we see no leaks underneath the truck. From here, we can come around to our exhaust stack. On this particular vehicle, it runs parallel with the ground. This is our exhaust stack here. All right, it is not chipped, cracked, or broken, not missing any nuts, bolts, screws, or U-bolts. All right, and there are no signs of soot that would indicate a exhaust leak. And we will follow this exhaust pipe all the way up to our engine block. At this point, we will open the hood. And we will begin pre-tripping this side of the engine. We will start with our alternator. The alternator is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. This alternator is belt driven, which drives us over to our belt. All right, and the belt is rubber, so it's not cut, frayed, dry rotted, or bulging. And when I pull on it, there is no more than 3/4 inch play from the center. Now to the rear of the alternator, right in here, we have our electrical wiring. All right, it's not cut, frayed, dry rotted, or burnt. And there are no exposed wires and no electrical damage. All right, now we're gonna come up here to our hoses. They're rubber, so they're not cut, frayed, dry rotted, or bulging. And I hear and see no leaks. Then we're going to move down to our window washer fluid reservoir. It's not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. It's filled to the proper level. If it wasn't, I would remove the cap and fill it to the proper level. And I hear and see no leaks. That's all we have to pre-trip on this side of the engine. Now we're going to walk around to the other side. All right, we are going to start with our coolant reservoir. It is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. It's filled to the proper level. If it wasn't, I would wait till the engine cooled, remove the cap, and fill it to the proper level. It's fluid in here, so I hear and see no leaks. I'm going to move now to my oil dipstick and my oil fill tube. All right, they're both not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. To check the proper level, you check it just like you would in your car. You pull out the dipstick, wipe it off, reinsert it, pull it back out, check the level. If everything's fine, you're done. If you need to add fluid or oil, you would do so here at the oil fill tube. And then again, recheck your levels. All right. Now we're going to go down to our water pump. All right, the water pump is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. It is belt driven. All right, and I hear and see no leaks. All right, and then we'll move forward from here, and we will go to our, and follow that little orange stick pointing right in there. Might be a little difficult to see, but this is our air compressor. It's not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. It is gear driven, and I hear and see no leaks. All right, now I'm going to move to the next component. This is my power steering fluid reservoir. It's not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. It's filled to the proper level. If it wasn't, I would remove the cap and fill it to the proper level. I hear and see no leaks. Then we come over to our power steering hoses. It's the top hose, and we have the bottom hose right there. All right, these hoses and all the hoses on this side are not cut, frayed, dry rotted, or bulging. I hear and see no leaks. And then I'm going to follow this bottom hose, and you can't see it, but if you follow it all the way down, it goes right down in there, and that leads you to the power steering pump. The power steering pump is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. It is also gear driven, and I hear and see no leaks. Next, we're going to come out, and we're going to stop here with the steering rod or steering arm. All right, it's not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. Then we follow that on down to my U-joints and sockets. That's them right here. All right, they're not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws, and they're not worn or loose. As I continue coming straight down, this takes me to the power steering box, or gear box, some people say. All right, they're both not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws, and I see no signs of leaks. This here is my pitman arm. The pitman arm is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. If I come down here, right here is the cotter pin, the castle nut and cotter pin. All right, they are located at both ends of the drag link. This is the drag link. So all you have to say is my castle nut and cotter pins are intact at both ends of the drag link, which takes me to the drag link, which is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. And then I'm going to finish up my steering linkage with the steering knuckle. That's the point that I'm touching right here. Steering knuckle is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. Now I'm going to move on to my suspension, and we're going to start with my front spring mount. And if you look all the way in the rear, I have a rear spring mount, and I'm going to include my U-bolts with that right there. All right, so my front and rear spring mounts and U-bolts are not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. Then I'm gonna come right over here, and this is my leaf spring. The leaf spring is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. If a quarter of this leaf was missing, it would place this truck out of service, and the leaves are properly aligned, stacked one on top of the other. All right, and then I'm gonna go here to my shock absorber. All right, the shock absorber is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws, and I hear and see no leaks. That concludes my suspension. Now I'm gonna move to my brake system. This is my brake hose. It's rubber, so it's not cut, frayed, dry rotted, or bulging. I hear and see no leaks. And it goes straight down into my brake chamber and locking ring. It's not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws, and I hear and see no leaks. Now on the back side of that brake chamber and locking ring is our slack adjuster and push rod. Slack adjuster and push rod is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. It's at a 90-degree angle. With the brakes off, I should be able to pull it out no more than 1 inch. And if you look right in here, you can see my cotter pins are intact. All right, now we're going to go further into our brake system, and I'm going to put it right there. That I'm touching right there is the brake lining. The brake lining is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. There's no excessive wear or dangerously thin, and there's no signs of oil or grease. Now, this right here on the other side is the brake drum. The brake drum is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. There's no signs of oil or grease, and no wells other than factory. That completes the brake system, and we'll move right on out to our tire. All right, the tire. There is no uneven wear. The tread depth for this steer tire is no less than 4/32. On the side of my tire, it's not cut, frayed, dry rotted, or bulging. It is filled to the proper pressure, which is 100 psi. I'm going to check that at the valve stem. There it is. And I'm going to check that with a tire pressure gauge. And my valve stem is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. That takes me right to my rim. The rim is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. There are no holes or wells other than factory. Then this takes me to my lug nuts and studs. The lug nuts and studs are not bent, broken, and cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. I see no signs of running rust that would indicate a loose lug nut. This is my hub seal. The hub seal is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. It's filled to the proper level because I don't hear or see any leaks. Now we're going to come up here and go to my mirror bracket on the door and my mirror bracket on the hood. They're both not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. Then I'm going to go to I'm going to include my window. I'm going to catch my mirrors on the door, and I'm going to catch the mirror on the hood. They are all not chipped, cracked, or broken, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws, and they are clean and clear. Then that takes me to the door handle. The door handle's not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws, and it functions. At this point, you will open the door. And we'll go inside to our door seal. Right here, it's rubber, so it's not cut, frayed, dry rotted, or bulging, and it is intact. We're going to come over here to our door hinge pin. All right, it's not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. It's functioning, secure, and intact. At this point, we can step back and close the door, and we're going to drop down to our steps. Our steps are not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws, and there's no sign of debris. I'm going to go right behind the steps to the fuel tank. This fuel tank is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. The straps are not bent, broken, and cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. And I see no shiny metal that would indicate a loose or shifting tank. The fuel tank cap is secure. Now, I'm going to come to this door. I'm going to check this door and all its components just like I did here. And now I'm going to open this door and we will check our emergency equipment. As you can see here, this is my emergency kit. It has 3 reflective triangles. In the glove compartment up front, I have spare fuses and circuit breakers. And this is my fire extinguisher. My fire extinguisher is fully rated, fully dated, and fully charged. Rated, dated, and fully charged. Now we're able to shut this door, and we will come to our DEF tank, diesel exhaust fluid. All right, the DEF tank is not bent, broken, or cracked, not missing any nuts, bolts, or screws. All right, the cap is secure, and I hear and see no leaks. This is the first part of this video. If you were paying attention, then you should have noticed that I missed one thing, and I'm going to say it's on purpose, and that's our alternator over here is belt driven. I just feel like I just didn't say that. This is a lot to cover. Don't get overwhelmed. After you start doing it every day, it becomes normal. So this is the first part that we're going to check. The next video, we're going to check the rest of the back end of the truck and the entire trailer.